In this section, we're going to look at how we can organize information or data into sets and Venn diagrams in order to answer questions about that information. Now, a set in mathematics, or in general, is defined as a collection of objects. Now, those objects can be anything. They could be people, they could be dishes, just a collection of something. The members of a set, or what we call elements, are the specific objects that are in the set. In mathematics, we often use braces, or sometimes I've heard people refer to these as curly brackets to denote a set. For instance, the first four natural numbers are what we in mathematics refer to also as counting numbers, would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I wanted to write that as a set, I would start with the brace and then put the first number, 1, and then a comma, 2, comma, 3, comma, 4, and then close the set with the closing brace to show that I have 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, and between each element I put a comma in between them. So that's the set of the first 4 natural numbers. If I wanted to look at all natural numbers, that would again start at 1, 2, 3, 4, and I could keep going, but I would be here forever. So when we want to show a pattern goes forever, we use an ellipse, which is basically 3 dots. And that is telling someone that take a look at the pattern and continue that pattern indefinitely. So then we close the brace. The English alphabet, we can do the same thing with. Typically, we start at A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. And so we are continuing the pattern. However, with the English alphabet, we don't go forever. The last letter is a Z. So we put our ellipse and then we put a comma and put the last letter. So we're showing the pattern, but we're also showing that it ends by putting the last letter at the end of the set. Now, I've been doing this with simple things, but it can be, again, a set can be a collection of just any objects. We could talk about the suits in a deck of cards. A standard deck of cards has 4 suits. We can list those in any order. I would say hearts is one suit, diamonds is another, clubs is the third suit, and the one that I haven't mentioned yet is spades. So there would be the suits in a deck of cards. In this case, there's just 4 suits, so we just list them all out with commas in between them, and we're good. A Venn diagram is a visual way of representing sets and the information related to them. A Venn diagram is usually composed of 2 or more things. Specifically, the first, an outer rectangle that represents the universe. And what I mean by the universe for our situation is all things of interest in that situation. And then inner circles, it could just be 1 or it could be more, inner circles that represent the sets themselves. Let's look at an example of this. 8 people, Gloria, Soraya, Clara, Rashad, Diego, Maria, Parker, and Alex, live in an apartment building. Here's some information about their transportation options. Gloria, Soraya, Clara, Rashad, and Diego each have a bicycle. Maria, Gloria, and Diego each have a car. And Parker has a TriMet pass. Let's let the universe be all the people in the building. So remember, the universe is basically going to be represented as a big old rectangle. So I'm basically going to have all of the people, all 8 of them in this universe. But let's look at what else we've defined here in terms of our situation before we start plugging names in. Let's let set A be people with cars. Now, there are 3 people with cars, and they all have a different first name, and I set this up specifically a different letter of the alphabet for their first name. So I'm going to abbreviate and write this set as Maria, M for Maria, G for Gloria, and D for Diego. So there's my set of people with cars. People with bikes, there's 5 of those people. Let's write them down. Gloria, Soraya, Clara, Rashad, and Diego. And only 1 person with a TriMet pass, Parker. Now, one thing to note is that we have a little bit of overlap. Gloria has both a car and a bike, and we can see that Diego has both a car and a bike. So there are some people that are in 2 sets. instead of just a single set. So when I go to draw the circles that represent people, and in particular people with cars, people with bikes, and people with TriMet passes, I want to acknowledge when I have overlap between those sets, or people that would be in both, because what we want to do in our Venn diagram is only write each person exactly once. So I'm going to draw a set. I'm going to say this circle, or this set, and your circle doesn't have to be perfectly shaped. Let's say this is the people with cars. And I'm just going to write cars to abbreviate that. And then I'm going to draw another set, and this is going to be the set of people with bikes. And I'm going to go ahead and write people's names in. And again, I'll just make it easy by putting their initial. We know we have Gloria and Diego in the overlap because both Gloria and Diego have cars and bikes. If we continue with the people who have cars, Maria has a car but not a bike, so Maria should be in the part of the car set that does not overlap with bikes. Likewise, we have 3 people who have bikes but not a car. So Soraya, Clara, and Rashad should be in the bike circle but not in the overlapping region with cars. So what we now have are the first 2 sets, set A with people with cars, set B with people with bikes, drawn in with the people who have those objects. And then we have one person, Parker, that has a TriMet pass. Parker is in a set all by himself. No one else has a TriMet pass. So that would be its own set, totally separate from the other 2. So I'm going to draw a little circle here for having a TriMet pass. And I'll put Parker here for having a TriMet pass. So let's take a look at what we have. We have Gloria represented in this picture. We have Soraya. We have Clara. We have Rashad. We have Diego. We have Maria. And we have Parker. So we have 7 of the 8 people represented. Double check. Gloria, Soraya, Clara, Diego, Rashad, Maria, and Parker. Who we don't have is Alex. Alex needs to be in this universe as well, because remember, the universe represents everyone who is in the building. So we need to put Alex into this picture. He doesn't have to, he's not in a set that we've defined. So what we're going to do is put him outside of the defined sets. So we'll put Alex right here. Alex doesn't have any of these features, so we're going to put him inside the universe, but outside of all 3 of the sets that were described. So this is what we call a Venn diagram. The Venn diagram is showing you specifically defined sets and who is in those sets, as well as who is not in those sets of the people you're interested in this universal situation. All right, so that's an example of a set diagram. One thing I want to mention before we move on to other examples is that this set diagram, I've actually listed out the first initial of each of the people. But what's more typical in most Venn diagrams is to actually draw the diagram and actually just put the number of objects or people that are in those sets in those locations. So if I repeat the sets here, cars, bikes, and then I have TriMet here. What I would put in is, instead of the actual names, I'd put in how many people are in that region. So we had one person who had a car but not a bike. We had 2 people who had cars and bikes. We had 3 people who only had a bike, and 1 person that had a TriMet pass. And then we had 1 person that was outside of all of the sets that were, but was still in the universe, in other words, in the building, the apartment building. So if I count those up now, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 1, that would be 8 people. It's not required that you put the total in the upper left corner here. I just wanted to emphasize that what we have here is all 8 people accounted for exactly once, because the numbers add up totally to 8.